fabled heat, where magic meets desire. Subscribe to ignite the fantasy.
A shame I liked that painting. If you were able to admire it now, amidst the rubble and the rising smoke of the Selkith stronghold, you would have seen my mother wearing a blue silk dress with an amethyst brooch on the shoulder. The cloth was pleated and delicately folded through the silver fastener, such that when draped over her chest, it would fan out and ripple like the deepest parts of the ocean. It came with a white corset and a lace lining, lotus patterns mirrored in spiraling vines. The shapes and details were simplified in that painting for the sake of the artist's sanity, but you could tell that it was the dress of a queen. I was 10 when I first saw it. Now at 22, I am wearing it. I fastened the amethyst brooch with trembling fingers while the screams began outside. I cinched the corset until my ribs groaned, the sharp pressure a welcome anchor while the world outside fell apart. I have watched 400 men die in the last 30 minutes. The Selkith was a stronghold built by my great-granduncle, a paranoid man who loved stone more than people. It bore 2 outer walls at different elevations, 50 ballistae capable of launching iron bolts 400 meters, and 6 towers. It was a citadel of death, and yet, looking out the narrow arrow slit of the southwestern tower, I watched the northern tower dissolve. It did not crumble, it was erased. The architect of this devastation was a living shadow against the moon, a creature of such impossible, terrible geometry that my mind reeled trying to comprehend it. It crouched like a rabbit before leaping toward the night sky with wings that spanned the heavens. Ballista bolts chased it, futile needles thrown at a god. It defied the engineering of mortal weaponry. It reached down from the sky and razed the land with fire that burned not orange, but a blinding, chemical white. I knew I was going to die. That was why I wore the dress. If I was to be Ash, I wanted to be beautiful Ash. I wanted to look like the mermaid princess I believed my mother to be, not the neglected daughter of a king who used me as a political bargaining chip in a province he barely remembered. The plan had been simple: hide in a random tower. Probability was my shield, 1 in 6. Then the dragon destroyed the north tower, 1 in 5. The eastern tower fell next, crumbling into the ravine with a sound like the earth cracking open, 1 in 4. I sat on the floor, the blue silk pooling around me, waiting. I had a bottle of perfume in my hand, a gift from a gray-bearded general I was supposed to marry. I never opened it. I held it like a grenade. The air pressure in the room dropped, my ears popped. The silence that followed was heavier than the screaming. With a sound like tearing canvas, the roof of my chamber was ripped away. Moonlight flooded in, followed instantly by the massive, heat-radiating bulk of a head larger than a carriage. I looked up, paralyzed, the perfume bottle slipping from my sweat-slicked palm to shatter on the stone. The scent of gardenias and heavy musk exploded into the air, a fragile, feminine scent at war with the sulfur and ruin. A full-grown dragon looked down at me. It was obsidian black, its scales absorbing the light rather than reflecting it. Its eyes were molten gold, vertical slits that dilated as they locked onto me. It did not roar. It breathed, a wet, rasping sound that vibrated in my chest cavity. I did not move. I was a statue in blue silk. It lowered its head, the heat from its nostrils singeing the stray hairs on my forehead. I saw the intelligence in those golden eyes, cruel, ancient, and undeniable. It was not an animal. It was a calamity with a mind. "Princess," a voice rumbled, not spoken, but felt in the marrow of my bones. It reared back, and for a second I thought the fire was coming. I closed my eyes, waiting for the flash. Instead, a grip of impossible strength seized the tower. Talons as thick as tree trunks crushed stone and glass, and the floor beneath me tilted violently. I screamed as I slid, silk tearing on rough masonry, my fate sealed not by fire but by a chilling, deliberate capture. The world dropped away. I was in the air, clamped against a chest hard as diamond, the city of Selkith shrinking into a burning ember below. We were rising, higher into the freezing dark, leaving the war, the dead men, and my life behind. The flight was a blur of terror and freezing wind. I lost consciousness twice, the altitude thinning the air until my lungs burned. Each time I woke, the world was a dizzying tapestry of clouds and jagged peaks far below. The beast's body was a living furnace, and the press of its hot, scaled underbelly against my side was the only thing that kept the killing frost at bay. I was its prisoner, kept alive by the very source of my terror. We landed with a force that rattled my teeth. I was dropped ungracefully onto cold, hard stone. I rolled, gasping, my hands scraping against rough granite. The air here was thin and sharp, smelling of pine and ozone. We were high up, well above the timberline. I scrambled backward until my back hit a rock wall. We were in a cavern, vast and natural, open on one side to a sheer drop in the starry sky. The dragon loomed at the entrance, blocking the moonlight. Now that we were grounded, the sheer scale of him was overwhelming. He was a mountain of muscle and scale, his tail twitching with agitation. But he was hurt. A massive iron bolt, the shaft as thick as my arm, was lodged deep between his shoulder blades. Dark, viscous blood oozed around the entry wound, dripping onto the stone with a hiss. He shuddered, a full-body convulsion that shook the cavern floor, and then collapsed onto his front legs with a groan that was less a sound and more a vibration of pure agony. "Why are you wearing a dress?" The voice was impossibly deep, a gravelly rumble that echoed not just off the stone walls but through my bones. I blinked, the absurdity of the question short-circuiting my panic. "Excuse me." The dragon turned his massive head to look at me, one golden eye narrowing. "Your stronghold, I have sieged it. It is a place of war. Why do you wear that?" "I did not have anything else to wear," I lied, my voice shaking. He exhaled, a puff of smoke rolling over the floor. He clearly did not believe me. "I felt like wearing a dress," I snapped, adrenaline making me reckless. "I was going to put on perfume and jewelry until you made my wall, ceiling, and half my bed disappear, along with my life." The dragon sniffed the air. He smelled the lingering gardenia musk on me from the broken bottle. "My apologies." I stared at him. "Are you apologizing for the perfume?" "Yes," he shifted, wincing as the bolt in his back moved. "And the roof. You just slaughtered hundreds, burned them alive." "Yes. And you apologize for my perfume." "We were equals," he rumbled. "This is a battlefield. Those men were warriors. I fought them as such. They were ready to die, as was I. You possess no armor. You carry no weapon." He dragged himself further into the cave. The movement labored. The mighty beast that had batted away towers was fading. "I am not a monster," he muttered, his eyelids drooping. "Did my father tell you to say that before you ate him?" No, the dragon's form seemed to blur. The edges of his silhouette wavered like heat haze. "I do not eat men, their armor tastes of rust." He let out a sharp hiss of pain. "The bolt, it is poisoned ash root." I watched, horrified and mesmerized, as the black scales began to recede. The massive shape collapsed inward, bones cracking and reshaping with wet, sickening snaps. The wings folded and melted into skin. The snout retracted. Steam billowed off his body, obscuring him for a moment. When the mist cleared, a man lay panting on the cold stone floor. He was huge, easily near 7 feet tall, naked and shivering with the shock of his transformation. His skin was the color of burnished bronze, taut over a physique built for war. Patches of obsidian scales still clung to his shoulders and spine like remnants of divine armor. He had a mane of wild, dark hair and those same terrifying golden eyes, now wide with pain in a brutally handsome face. But the ballista bolt was still there. It had shrunk with him, or rather, the magic of his shift had tried to accommodate the foreign object, but it was now a jagged, horrific wound in the back of a human-shaped man. He tried to push himself up and failed, collapsing face first. He looked at me, blood leaking from his mouth. "Help me," he rasped, his voice raw and human, yet still thrumming with the command of a king. He pinned me with his gaze, the golden depths shimmering with pain and fury. "Or you die here, alone in the cold." The logical part of my brain, the part that listened to my father's generals, screamed at me to pick up a rock and finish the job. He was the enemy. He was a weapon of mass destruction in human skin. But the part of me that had put on the blue dress, the part that felt the crushing weight of loneliness even in a crowded court, hesitated. I looked at his back. The wound was grotesque. The poison he spoke of, ashroot, was a paralytic used for hunting bears. On a dragon, it was slowing him down. On a man, it would stop his heart. "If I help you," I whispered, stepping closer, the silk of my dress swishing softly, "you have to promise not to kill me." He laughed, a wet, choking sound. "I captured you. Why would I destroy my prize?" Prize? My blood ran cold, but I knelt beside him anyway. Is that all I am? You are leverage, he grunted, burying his face in his arms. Pull it out. I hovered my hands over the wound, the heat radiating from his skin so intense it was like holding them over a forge. It was an almost unbearable living heat that spoke of the fire coiled within him. I could smell the iron of his blood and something else, ancient, like dry parchment and thunderstorms. This is going to hurt, I said, gripping the shaft of the bolt. It was slick with his blood. Do it. I braced my knee against the small of his back, the contact searing through the thin silk of my dress. His skin was hard as stone, coiled with unyielding muscle. Taking a steadying breath, I pulled. He screamed. It was not a human scream. It was the shriek of a hawk, a primal noise that vibrated against my teeth. I pulled harder, sobbing with the effort, until the barbed head of the bolt tore free with a sickening squelch. I threw the bloody iron across the cave and scrambled back, wiping my hands on my dress. The blue silk was now stained violet with dragon blood. The dragon, gasped for air, his back arching. The wound began to knit together before my eyes, the magic of his kind fighting the damage, but the poison lingered. He rolled onto his back, his chest heaving. For the first time I saw his face clearly, unobscured by agony. He was devastating, not just handsome, but forged from some harsher, more magnificent element. Sharp cheekbones, a heavy brow, and a mouth that looked cruel and sensual in equal measure, even in repose. He opened his eyes and looked at me. The gold was dimming, terrified pupil dilation replacing the arrogance. Water, he whispered. There was a trickle of meltwater near the cave entrance. I used a hollow in the rock to cup some and brought it to him, dribbling it into his mouth. I did this 3 times. Why? I asked, sitting back on my heels, shivering as the adrenaline faded and the mountain cold set in. Why kidnap me? Why not just kill me like the others? He swallowed, his breathing steadying. The king, your father, encroaches on the high peaks. He mines the nesting grounds. So you take his daughter. I take his future. His gaze drifted over me, lingering on the ruined dress. He values lineage above all. You are his only heir. I let out a bitter, hollow laugh. You miscalculated, dragon. My father has 3 bastards he favors more than me. I am a failed treaty waiting to happen. He will not stop the war for me. He will just use my death as a rallying cry. The dragon frowned, his brows knitting together. He looked genuinely confused. But you are precious. I am a pawn. He reached out, his hand trembling with effort, and his fingers brushed the stained hem of my silk skirt. The brief touch was a brand, a spark of his inner furnace against my frozen skin that sent a jolt straight up my spine. To your kind, perhaps, to mine something that shines so bright is rare. I froze. What shines? Your soul, he murmured, his eyes lidding. It screams. That is why I saw you in the tower. You were louder than the war. The intimacy of the statement hung between us, heavy and thick. Enemies. We were enemies. But seated here in the dark, with his blood on my hands and his heat keeping me alive, the lines were blurring. What is your name? I asked quietly. Valdr, he breathed. I am Elara. Elara, he tested the name, his voice a low rumble that sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. You should sleep, Elara, my body heat, stay close, or the frost will take you. It was a trap, it had to be, but the cold was biting into my marrow. Hesitantly, terrified, I lay down on the stone, curling myself into the curve of his body. In his sleep he moved, his arm, heavy as stone and radiating a profound heat, draped over my waist, pulling me flush against the solid wall of his chest. My mind screamed to fight, to run, but my body, starved of warmth and safety, betrayed me. It melted against him, seeking refuge. I buried my face in the crook of his neck, inhaling the scent of ozone, blood, and something ancient and uniquely male, and surrendered to a dreamless sleep. I woke to the sound of horns. Valdr jerked awake beneath me, his body instantly tense, hard as stone. I scrambled up, rushing to the cave entrance. Far below, marching up the narrow goat path that led to the peak, were banners, blue and silver. My father's men, I gasped. Valdr stood, staggering slightly. He was still pale, the poison not fully purged. They found us quickly. They are here to rescue me, I said, relief washing over me. Valdr moved up beside me, his nakedness forgotten, his presence dominating the space. He looked down at the army, his lip curling. No, Elara, he said, his voice void of hope. Look at the formation, look at the machines. I looked, they were not carrying litters for a wounded princess. They were hauling disassembled ballistae. They were dragging iron chains. They are not here for a rescue, Valdr said, his hand gripping my shoulder, his claws extending slightly to prick the silk. They are here for a harvest. The wind whipped my hair across my face, stinging my eyes, but I could not look away from the procession below. Valdr was right, it was a hunting party. They tracked the blood, Valdr growled, stepping back into the shadows of the cave. I cannot shift, the poison remains, I cannot fly. He looked at me then, it was not the look of a monster assessing a meal, or a captor assessing a hostage. It was a warrior accepting his end. Go to them, he said. I stared at him, what? Go wave your dress, they will see you. Tell them you escaped while the beast slept. Tell them you wounded me. You will be a hero, your father will have to value you then. You want me to leave you. I am dead regardless, Valdr said, leaning heavily against the cave wall. His golden eyes burned with a tragic intensity. If you stay, you are collateral damage. If you go, you survive. I looked down at the dress, the blue silk, my mother's legacy, the dress of a mermaid princess, a fantasy. I looked at the men marching up the mountain, men who followed orders, men who killed because they were paid to, led by a father who saw me as currency. Then I looked at Valdr, a creature who had apologized for breaking my perfume bottle, who had kept me warm with his own dying body, who saw my soul as something that shined. No, I said. Valdr blinked, Elara. I am done doing what I am supposed to do, I said, my voice rising. I am done being a pawn. I turned back to the cave entrance. The lead soldiers were within shouting range now. I could see the captain, it was the man I was supposed to marry, the gray-bearded general. Princess, he shouted, spotting me. Get down, archers ready. Stand down, I screamed, stepping out onto the ledge, making myself a perfect target. The wind caught the blue silk, billowing it out like a flag of rebellion. Stand down, or I jump. The soldiers faltered, the general raised a hand. Princess Elara, step away from the cave, the beast is inside. The beast is the only one who has not lied to me, I yelled back. I turned to Valdr, can you fight? He looked at me with a raw awe that stole the air from my lungs. A slow, predatory heat built in his golden gaze, a fire meant just for me, and my knees threatened to buckle. For you, I can burn the world. Do not burn the world, I said, grabbing his hand. His skin seared mine, a pleasant, grounding pain. Just burn the chains. Elara, he rumbled, pulling me against his chest. He was trembling, not from weakness anymore, but from rage. If we do this, there is no going back. You are a traitor to your blood. My blood is cold, I whispered, my fingers tightening on his. Yours is fire. I looked up into his molten gold eyes, a willing sacrifice to his flame. I choose the fire. He kissed me then, it was not gentle. It was a collision, fierce and desperate, his mouth claiming mine with a possessiveness that should have terrified me. It tasted of iron and ash, of power and pain. It was a brand on my soul, a seal on my choice, a promise of the inferno to come. Cover your ears, he commanded when he pulled away, his breath hot against my lips. He did not shift fully, he did not have the strength, but he did not need to. He stepped past me to the ledge, inhaled deeply, and let out a roar that was not sound but force. Fire, liquid and white-hot, cascaded down the mountain path. It did not aim for the men, it aimed for the path itself. The rock turned to slag, the avalanche began. The soldiers scrambled back, shouting, retreating as the mountain face sheared away, separating us from them by a chasm of impossible width. We watched them run, we watched the dust settle. We were trapped on the peak, isolated, hunted, and alone. Valdr sank to his knees, exhausted, but he was smiling, a feral, beautiful smile. I sat beside him, arranging the tattered remains of my mother's blue dress around me. It was ruined, it was dirty, it was perfect. So, I said, the word a soft murmur against his skin as I rested my head on his shoulder. What do we eat now? Valdr laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that warmed the entire cave. He wrapped his arm around me, his scales a delightful abrasion against the silk. Whatever you desire, my fierce princess, he rumbled, his voice a possessive thrum against my ear. whatever you desire." I closed my eyes, listening to the steady beat of his heart, loud and strong against my ear. The war was not over. My father would return, but for the first time in my life, I was not waiting to die. I was ready to live.